Ghana police spokespersons and command would hardly grant media interviews. From regional to district and divisional commands, no one can speak to the press. This is because communication from every corner of the country has been centralized in Accra. There's worry that the national unit hardly gives information, and if it will, gives it very late. This information deficit is not only affecting information flow to the public, it's giving rise to undue speculation about many happenings in the country. Joy News editor Fifi Kumson examines how the situation is affecting information flow to the public.
Media has a big responsibility to, among others, educate and inform. But the new police media blackout in the regions and districts of the country, following the assumption of office of IGP George Akufo-Addo Dampare, threatens this mandate.
This has a very serious potential on giving room for speculations and misinformation.
Whenever a story breaks anywhere in the country, the police in those jurisdictions would direct journalists to the Central Police Communication Center here in Accra for comment. And on many occasions, when the journalists do, they get no answers. Almost every one of these newsmen and women has a story about how this decision by the police is affecting their work in the relay of information to Ghanaians.
Recently, there was a criminal case in one of our neighboring towns, Okrasi, and my outfit tried to authenticate and get facts and some clarification from our regional police command. Sadly enough, we were told to contact the national headquarters.
But how can one central communication center handle requests from 16 regions and 216 districts, municipalities, and metropolitan assemblies? Why would the police shut its commanders in the regions up, the people who have first-hand information, and rather rely on communication officers who only have secondary data?
Whether he thinks that his public relations officers in the regions or the district commanders or the divisional commanders are not competent enough to handle communication. Even if that is the case, I think that there should be a systematic approach to train them in handling PR at the local level.
Following the recent outbreak of violence in Boko, for example, police in the Upper East region could not speak, and it was difficult getting information from Accra.
Different kinds of information was going round, and the police PRO kept saying that he did not have information for me. If we needed the information at the time that he didn't have it, then he was suggesting that we should talk to the Public Affairs Directorate in Accra in order to get information, which for me is a bit ridiculous, because I cannot be here in Bolga in the Upper East region when something is happening, and then I need to go to Accra, nearly 900 kilometers away, in order to be able to get information to bring to the general public.
GGA President Albert Kwabena Jomfo in September last year called for a change. According to Mr. Jomfo,
depriving the media information in real time is a matter of serious concern to the association. Starving the media of information in a decentralized system using centralization tactics is impeding the work of the media as far as information dissemination is concerned.
Perhaps the police can take a leaf out of the books of their counterparts in some of the most advanced democracies, where local police and sheriffs in counties constantly update the public on developing stories.
The IGP should look at it again and look at areas where he has to relax it. He does that to pave way for us to be able to have credible dissemination of information.
So it makes the work very difficult, and in times like this, people who don't have the patience to wait until they can get information from the police may just report information that is not accurate. And when that happens, we are only misinforming the general public and probably even creating a more serious security problem in Boko.
The police media blackout in the regions and districts of the country is counter-democracy. It's time the IGP took another look at this directive that's increasingly robbing the public of critical information in a timely manner.
Now, Joy News trying to speak to the Public Affairs Department of the Ghana Police Service, but it's yet to get any answers from that particular department. Peter Tobu is a former executive secretary of the IGP, and he will be joining us as well as security analyst Adam Bona. Okay, so let me speak to Mr. Peter Tobu there, because he has been executive secretary to the IGP. How do you evaluate this practice where the police would want to centralize every information in Accra? Mr. Tobu, I'm beginning with you, sir. You have been in a position where probably some of these hard decisions were taken in your presence. How do you evaluate this practice of the police service centralizing information? I've been speaking to security analyst Adam Bona, who has been sharing some thought on it. He joins us live on the Zoom now. Grateful to you for joining us. You've been in this space for quite some time. What do you make of this decision to centralize information dissemination?
Well, good morning, and good morning to my brother, Tuobu, who is, I believe, is joined or is yet to join. What I can say is that with regards to what do you call that, this conversation we are having, I'm sure that if I quite remember, it didn't start under this current administration. Previously, there were times that if I, needed to speak to sometimes even those in charge of, the police public affairs directorate, they would direct me to speak to the IGP. I mean, previously, before this IGP took over. And there were times I needed to speak to the IGP for the IGP to give them directives before, I get to talk to them on some of these matters. But I would say that my expectations are that the Ghana Journalism Association, the GJA, together with probably, I think we have the National Media Commission and the others, would have to the Private Broadcasters Association and the rest. I'm expecting that there should have been a meeting by now in your, promo or the videos you played, of which you sent me a copy. I didn't hear anything like that where the GGA president said we had a meeting with the IGP. I'm very sure that if this thing is a worry as has been put out, then I was expecting the GGA, the Media Commission, and the National Media Commission, and probably the Private Broadcasters Association to have written to the IGP and his management board to have a meeting with them to see how some of these things can be relaxed. But if it hasn't been done, then it is difficult to say nothing at all is being done. I was expecting that they should have done that. But
should we even get here in a democracy? Should it be that the police would want to have every information which will be disseminated to the public coming from a centralized position in Accra, and not allow the regional commanders, district commanders, the space to explain issues that happen in their jurisdictions?
I am not holding brief for the media, and I wouldn't want to hold brief for the police either. Mine is that there is a situation at the moment, and as you have alluded to, how do we probably get over it? How do we get around to get go back to the status quo? But like I said, in the past, there have been issues with police communication. I have to be very honest with you. A typical example has to do with the Takoradi missing girls saga. There were a lot of miscommunication here and there from, the headquarters, and they kept contradicting themselves, where you had the regional PRO and then the PROs who manned the national headquarters. They kept contradicting themselves. That further made the situation, a bit more complex. And if you remember, it was out of one of those misinformation by the regional and the national, that culminated into massive demonstration in the Western region because then no one knew what was going on because then while the regional PRO was saying, the regional public affairs people were saying something else, those in Accra who manned the national headquarters were also saying something else. And if I spoke to your, Joy News around the time, and I thought that was very unprofessional. The police information should be probably tailor-made. It has to, from the source you are getting it from, it has to be good enough so that they shouldn't contradict themselves. I do remember under one of the public affairs directors, recently, I think about 2 years ago, another mishap. And so for me, I think that the media houses, GJ and everybody should sit around the table to be able to communicate. Your correspondent in the upper East region, actually, he said something that caught my attention. The issues of Boku. You can imagine if he has to come all the way to Accra to get information, concrete information to be able to give to the rest of you in Accra. That will not be the best. But I would urge that these things would have to be handled in a manner that is befitting. But in the past, some of us haven't been very comfortable with police communicators because some of them have not communicated well. They communicate, and sometimes you ask yourself, where did they get their information from? Because then once you communicate and you don't have all the facts, and later the real facts come out, then you are caught in between. Why did you communicate, prematurely when you didn't have all the facts? So I think the concern is a very legitimate one, but it needs to be looked at.
Let me bring in Peter Tobo here because he's a former executive secretary to the IGP. Grateful for joining us. Can you help us understand what could influence such a decision to say that information dissemination should be from Accra and not the region, and not from the regions or the district? I guess we've lost Mr. Tobo there, but Mr. Bona, Dr. Adam Bona, if we are to move on this, your suggestion that the media should sit with the police to find out ways. If we are looking at communication, from the police point of view, and between that and the public, which one would be more believable? Those at the center of the action, or those who are distant in Accra, and probably would have to, get information from down there from the regions before they can communicate to the issues?
So usually in the past, my dealings with the police, even today, I can tell you that there are times that some of us would get accurate information than sometimes those in the regions. You get accurate information because sometimes it has to do with trust. Let me be very honest with you. It has to do with trust. We, at a point in time in the history of this country, where people who are supposed to be giving accurate information to the police refuse to give that information to the police because of distrust, because they thought giving this information would compromise they themselves, because then you live in the region, and if you were to give this information to the local police, chances are that they might come after you. And you guys have done reports of brutalities in various regions, and when you check the source, you notice that maybe that person might have gone to report somebody and something untoward happened to the person, unfortunately, later on. And so, to answer your question directly, it should have been the trend where if something happens, let's say in Boku, your correspondence, if by now you should have had not just a correspondent in the Upper East, you should have had a correspondent in Boku, just like when you go to Jerusalem and the rest, where sometimes there are conflicts here and there, the CNN and the BBCs would station a correspondent, in the region, but then a correspondent also on the ground. And so, for instance, if something was going on, the correspondent in Boku would have to liaise with the correspondent for the region, so that they are able to give accurate information to the rest of you at the control center or in Accra. And so it should have been more believable to have the information being churned out at the source. But unfortunately, I do believe that we've had this conversation not once. Last year, I think your station engaged me again on this. But from last year up to now, I'm not sure what movements have been made. Because if we only talk, and no one is going behind the scene to find out the real issues, why is this so? Why can't we? Maybe it has to do with some unprofessional manner with which some officers and sometimes even the media personalities also turn out that information. Then probably you guys can then work out the guidelines, because then guidelines would help. As we speak today, elections in Nigeria, some deaths that occurred in Ghana in 2020 elections have found their way in Nigeria. And Nigerians and social media activists or social media, those on social media are pushing it, making it look like the shootings that happened in, is it Techima, actually happened in some part of Nigeria. So others have sat back and realized, no, this image is coming from Ghana. And so these are some of the things. So I would say that it is important that the police would have, you guys would have to sit with the police and the police sitting, granting you audience, because whether you like it or not, information will get out there. Whether you like it or not. Because then somebody is holding a phone and that person is doing a live, real-time broadcasting, and whether trained or untrained, that person is broadcasting. But then it is always important to add that layer of credibility, that layer of accuracy to that broadcast that person did, to debunk or to accept the fact that what that person did was correct or it wasn't correct. And so as far as I'm concerned, the conversation shouldn't just end with what we are doing this morning. Go behind the scene with media, National Media Commission, go with the Private Broadcasters Association, go with the GJA, media houses. Have a tete-a-tete with the police. See, is it something that you can help them to get over? Is it something that they can help you to get over? So that at the end of the day, because I'm not expecting your correspondents in the Upper East, in the Northern region, in Kumasi, all of them coming to Accra when Joy FM and Joy News is here to come and get the information from them before they give to you. So I think there is a gap, but that gap would have to be looked at, jointly.
Okay, but if it's a communication gap on the part of the officers, wouldn't a capacity building for the officers cure this? If the police feel that their officers are not able to communicate accurately on information, isn't the need for a capacity building the way to go?
That is not what I'm saying. What I am only looking at, what could be the challenge.
I understand you, but I'm trying to find out from you that if it is the challenge with communication on the part of the officers who are in the regions or the district, isn't capacity building the way to go from the police service?
I will not be able to tell if communication is the challenge to go. I've only used the past events to illustrate, to let you know what might have culminated into this. Because I haven't really engaged them to know why probably they are not giving access to correspondence in the region and access to allowing their communicators to communicate at the regions. I don't know what the situation is at the moment. I do not know. I'm only speaking to a previous event. But I'm only using the previous event to say that could be a factor. But if that is a factor, it is also important to situate it in the right context and say, if this could be a factor, then you know that, of course, maybe Joy FM correspondents might be communicating professionally. But let's also accept that some reporters would exaggerate events. You remember Ayawaso West Wagon. Initial report we had were that some people had been killed and other things have happened. Ejura, we had a good night. They said the number of people have died. And so mine is that I think in as much as there could be a problem with regards to what I'm alleging now, that maybe there are some communication gap on the part of the police, I think that largely some media personalities, sometimes when you hear them, sometimes in the local language, go over a lot of the things in a manner that inflames passion, put a lot of misinformation out there. Then obviously, if I am dealing with you, I'm careful. So I think that let's not assign blame here and there. It is important for our democracy, the democracy we now practice, to be able to communicate and communicate professionally. So sit with them, get your leaders to sit with them, and see how this whole thing can be looked at going forward.
Okay. Doc, I'm grateful for your time on the news this morning. Now, that's Dr. Adam Bonner. He is a security analyst. Moving on to the...